Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. I'm the Maestro Jeremy Carp. It is Wednesday, May 7th. It was a beautiful day up until the rain started to kick in. I'll tell you that right now. Want to say you can find Roundabout Sports on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Pocket Cast, and anywhere else where you stream your podcasts at. Also, want to say that you can follow Interstate 70 Sports Media on Facebook, on X, and on our official YouTube channel. Please be sure to subscribe. You can also find Roundabout Sports on our official Facebook page also. So, for the season 5 finale, folks, that's right, it is episode 131. We have finally gotten to this point. I'm excited. Later on, the good doctor, Jeremy Housewright, is going to join me because we are going to talk about his new book, For the Love of the Show 2. More stories from pro wrestling fans. I'm honored that I have, interestingly enough, a signed copy of the book. And just met the good doctor again a couple days ago at the Toy Man Show, Toy Convention at the Machinist Hall in Bridgeton, Missouri. So that was definitely a blast. But I will say this, folks. Once again, this is the second book he's written. So many stories in professional wrestling, and one book just couldn't cover it. And I'm honored to have him aboard. And folks, he has arrived, so allow me to introduce. He's a renowned published author, renowned photographer. In fact, website reviewstl.com was recognized last year as best blog by the A-list readers in STL magazine. And they will be taking part at SICW's FanFest 3, set for May 16th and 17th, where the good doctor will be there to sign copies of his new book. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the one, the only good doctor himself, Jeremy Housewright.
How are you?
I'm doing all right, my friend. How are you doing?
Great.
Fantastic. So, I got to say, I have a copy of your newest book right here. And the first question I have to ask is, we know about the success of your first book, and whether it's from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all over the web. I want to ask, what compelled you to write a sequel to it?
Well, it was pretty much based on the fact that I didn't get to include a couple stories from the second book into the first book. I just kind of ran out of time. So I decided to go ahead and write a second one, and never expected to have 11 stories in this one. So that was kind of a surprise. It seemed like once I started finding stories, they just kept coming one after another. And finally, I cut it off after 11, and I probably could have had 13 if I really wanted to.
So your first book had 102 pages, but how many stories, for those that don't have the book, did the first book consist of?
First book had my story and 6 other stories. So I broke it down into, I believe, 12 chapters for that one. So yeah, it was 6. So that was my concern. It's like, I was concerned with 11. It was going to be way too many. And it actually turned out to be right about the right length. I have it at about 145 pages for the second book, which is kind of right where I wanted it to be, right around 150.
I was going to say, yeah, it's very fascinating. And it does have, a good mixture of pictures of the fans as well as stories. Now, I want to say my particular favorite, and I think it's also because I've known you long enough to where I can see like the relation and everything, is from chapter 5, Nick Mason's story.
Okay.
And with Nick Mason, and you brought up your health journey.
Yeah.
Whether it's just feeling better, eating better, your weight loss journey, and you showcase it every day, and I love the accountability that you give yourself. And Nick's story mentions about how much DDP yoga was a big help for him.
Yeah.
So was this one of the stories that really connected with you on a personal level?
Absolutely. I remember the night I spoke to him. It was it was night for him. It was daytime for me. But it was late November, probably late November, early December, and I was really feeling like crap right around then. I hadn't made a change or anything like that, but I knew that something needed to happen. I just wasn't quite ready for it yet. And after talking to him and writing his story, it kind of just motivated me. So I don't know if I would be where I'm at right now if it wasn't for talking to Nick. I mean, he certainly wasn't the main factor, but he was he was obviously a driving force, seeing that he was able to make the change and do those positive things. It definitely lit a fire under me to at least give it a shot. And once I started, I was off and running, as they say. So it's been a great thing, and that's what I've been telling people. This entire book really had a profound impact upon me personally. I think that when I started it and up till now, I'm a totally different person, physically, mentally, spiritually, all of it. And it's a lot of it is because of the individuals that I've worked with for this book.
You tell us that there were so many stories that you wanted for the first one that there was plenty of source material for writing a second one. Well, what was the original inspiration for you to write the first book in the beginning?
So when I started traveling to different pro wrestling shows, whether it be WrestleManias or independent shows in different areas, Chicago and so forth, I was able to meet several different individuals who I became friends with. And during those journeys, we got ourselves into some hot water in certain areas. In the first book, I talk about stumbling into a hotel that was actually being used to cook meth. And we had no idea till we walked in and checked it out. So, just stories like that have a bit of humor to them. Obviously sentimental stories, meeting my buddy Joey, who lives in Canada, and then my buddy Eric and Ray and Eli, who two of them live out in LA, and Eli lives over in Illinois. But we always talk about wrestling. We have a messenger group together, and that's all we do is message each other about wrestling. And we talk probably every other night, just sending each other, whether it be just talking about Raw or SmackDown or even AEW at times. It's just cool to have friends like that who we met because of pro wrestling, and we are friends because of pro wrestling, and will always be. And my buddy Joey, who lives in Canada, he actually came down to St. Louis and stayed with me right after we met him at WrestleMania. So, just creating relationships like that is what motivated me to come up with the idea for the book.
Is professional wrestling, when it comes to all sports, you've been around all different types of sports for a long time, is pro wrestling the one that probably connects to your heart the most?
It's a tough one. I will say
Okay.
that it's definitely up there because I shared that bond with my grandfather as a young boy, and one of the first events I can remember us going to was a pro wrestling match over at the Kiel Auditorium on a Friday night to see Hulk
Oh,
Hogan.
wow.
Um, so I'd say it was either pro wrestling or going to Kansas City Chiefs games with him. I mean, that's the reason I'm a Chiefs fan today is because of him. Um, I can remember being a little kid, 6, 7 years old, and I'd spend a night at their house a lot because they lived across town in Columbia, Illinois. And I can remember on Sundays he would be getting up to go to Cardinal football games. And he always told me, I couldn't go because I was too young. And obviously, by the time I got old enough to where he would take me, which was like 10, I think I was 10 or 11, the Cardinals had moved. So we started going to Chiefs games. And so that's how I became a diehard Chiefs fan. There's actually a brick outside the stadium when they built the new addition onto Arrowhead. Season ticket holders could buy a brick and inscribe a saying. And I actually had a brick made, and it's got my name and his name, and it says Chiefs fans for life on it. So anytime I get up to Kansas City for a game, I make sure I go there and I touch it as a reminder of,
Oh,
all that. So, but, the wrestling, I have my very first wrestling ticket that he bought me for the Kiel Auditorium from 1987. So, I mean, yeah, it definitely has a sentimental value. So I'd say either that or football. They're both right around the same as far as, what they mean to me.
it's kind of like a 1A, 1B type thing almost.
Yes.
Um, which I totally understand that.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. So my grandpa, who had just passed away last month,
Mm-hmm.
he was a pro wrestling fan as well, and he went to shows down at the Chase. And he might
Yeah.
be one of the last people I know that saw Gorgeous George of all people wrestle. He says he remembers
That's
seeing
funny,
Gorgeous
man.
George down there
My
and
grandpa
I'm
used to
thinking
talk
to
about Gorgeous
myself,
George.
I'm like, of all the people you hear your families talk about when it comes to pro wrestling, I mean, yeah, you'll hear Luthez, Buddy Rogers, and then I'm thinking, damn, he's talking about Gorgeous George. That is
Yeah.
because he watched the year he got inducted in the Hall of Fame, and his wife was the one that inducted him. I remember he had
Right.
watched that with me. So I love that there's never a shortage of stories. And I love the review for the first book that you have, where and obviously this would play into the second one. It's a unique book that's never been done before on
Right.
fans. Usually, books like this are specifically on the author. So it would
Mm-hmm.
be as if I pick up this book and it's just you telling your experiences, but
Right.
it's you, talking with fans
Mm-hmm.
and from all walks of life, from
Yes.
all different stories. You know, did you find it important to really diversify um, as far as the stories that you put into the book?
At the time, I didn't think about it a whole lot, but especially with the first book, I really didn't think about it at all. In the second book, when I knew I'd have to have more stories because I didn't have a whole lot more to add personally. I mean, I do. When you read that book, you do see me throw little things in here and there at the beginning of each chapter as to kind of why I chose each individual. Um, but yeah, that was important to me. It was important to me, one, to make sure that I included the female perspective, and two, to make sure that I had kids involved with this one. I thought that a couple of the stories involving kids were very, very touching. They really struck a chord with me. And, you know, I could see myself in each of these kids a little bit, you know, just the excitement that they got going to these shows, or maybe being quiet in school, and you know, things like that. That's how I was as a kid. And so those struck a chord with me. And then getting to talk to their parents as well, um, that was pretty cool as well, because obviously the kids were not as talkative as the parents, you know, so the parents really elaborated on
Right.
everything, and that helped. So that was also important to me, to make sure I had the kids side of the stories. And you know, I think that I did a pretty decent job of diversifying them. Um, you're right. There are people from all walks of life in this book, and that's really what makes it cool. I mean, there's a teacher, there's kids who've dealt with autism, there's people who've dealt with cancer, there are people who are in the news industry who are trying to live out their dream as a wrestler, people who are dealing with health or weight issues, you know. So there's a little something for everybody in this book, and that's what I think makes it so cool. And that's what I keep trying to get across to people is it's about wrestling fans, but the book itself, you don't have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy this. I've had people read this book already who don't watch wrestling whatsoever. And the probably only wrestler they know of is The Rock, because he's in movies. Um, but they loved it because it's so inspirational. And that's the thing. That's what I was really going for with this. I wanted to inspire people. I wanted to motivate people to make a change, if they thought they needed to, or just see the positive that's in the world, because right now we don't see a whole lot of positive in the world. So I think a book like this really
Oh my
shows you,
gosh. Yeah,
you know,
no.
this book will show you that there's still a lot of positive out there in the world, you know, not just in the US, but abroad. Because that was what another thing I really wanted to do with this one is make sure that I went outside the United States.
Okay. So, and I love that you're really trying to captivate both wrestling and non-wrestling fans. And I think that's another thing that really makes the book, such a good read is that, yeah, it's about a certain subject matter, but you can attribute it to different aspects of one's life. Like I
Right.
said, to refer back kind of to Nick's story in chapter 5, you don't have to be a wrestling fan to do DDP yoga and make lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. You're exactly right.
so, it's perfect. And one thing I wanted to also ask you is, you know, first book, big success, you know, that goes without saying. Second book, it's been out for a while, and it's also seen tremendous success, both in the sales and also in just the reviews of it. I mean, you are getting overwhelmingly positive feedback from people on in all aspects, on whether it
Mhm.
be on Barnes and Noble, on Amazon. What does this mean to you, and how satisfied are you with the success that you've been having with both books at this point?
Sure. You know, to be honest, I wasn't happy with the first book. I
Really?
think, yeah, I'll explain. You know, that there's an old saying that we are our own worst critic, and that holds true with me,
Yes.
because when it comes to writing, when it comes to journalism, I'm very, very, I'm very, very strict with myself. Um, I'm very hard on myself. I, you know, I know the talent that I have, and I felt like in the first book that The one issue I have with it is I went with an outside editor. And looking back at it now, I see things that he missed. And that aggravates the living hell out of me. It really does. And I'll be honest, it was to the point where when I was making the second book, I almost redid the entire first book. And I was either going to release it on its own as a special edition, or I was going to just put everything together, first and second book together into one. But then I talked to some people, and they were like, it was a learning experience. It was the first time I'd ever written a book. And I certainly didn't know everything that went into making a book. I think I went into it a little naive, thinking I'm going to sit at my computer and type and type and type till I have everything down that I want. And then I'll edit it once and I'm good to go. And it was nothing like that. There is so much more that goes into making a book than just writing it or typing it. So that, now that I look back at it, I am still proud of it because I love the stories in it. I love the fact that I have Izzy's story in it. I love the fact that Kurt Gannon's story is in it. And Kurt's actually going to be at SICW Wrestling. And he put on social media today he'll be signing copies of the book for people if they want him to, which is really cool.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I like the Bray Wyatt aspect of it because I did not expect that to come about when I was writing the book. That just, all of a sudden kind of popped up. So there are things that I like about it. And I'm proud of the fact that I always get told that it's something totally different than people would expect. That it's, having something told from the fans' point of view is a new concept that no one had ever thought of. So I am proud of it in that aspect. With the second book, it was more that I wanted to handle everything myself. It was almost a challenge that I made to myself that I'm not only going to write this second book, but it's going to be a hell of a lot better than the first book. And that was in my mind the entire time, is I wanted to blow the first book out of the water. And I feel like I did. I really do. I feel like I did. The second book stands on its own. You don't even have to pick up the first book if you don't want to. It's a standalone. And I almost wish maybe I would have given it a different name, but I feel like they can go together, but it's not necessary.
They correlate, but there's a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Yeah.
The themes are
if you pick up the second one, you're not missing anything from the first one, but you're just getting more content. It's because it's the same thing. Like, a lot of people may think, a lot of times in instances like this, it would be a redundancy. You have basically the same subject matter times two, but it's not. Yeah. It's the same idea, but a completely different source material.
Absolutely. And that's why I did it. And I would not have went ahead with it if it was the same exact thing, because that would have been boring to me.
So how did you go about the post writing of the you said you had gone with an outside editor, and I think it seems like it wasn't as much your fullest just all you on that final product of the first book. So how did you approach doing the post for the second book?
Honestly, I think the post stuff took longer than actually writing it. I went through 4 different editing sessions, and like I said, I did everything on my own. So I went in and I printed the entire book out on regular paper at first, and I went through and did all the edits, and then I went in and I made the corrections, Then I did a second read through and made some corrections. Then after that, I let it lay and I started working on the formatting of it, which the formatting of it was pure hell. I'll be honest. I remember I had messaged a guy, and I can name drop him. His name's Greg Oliver. He used to run Slam Wrestling online, and he's from Canada, and great guy, and he's heavily involved in helping people write their books. So he's been involved in probably a dozen or more wrestling and hockey and different sporting books out there. And so I would pick his brain every now and then about how to do the formatting because I had no freaking clue on how to format a book. And there's programs you can buy to format it. So, of course, I started trying to format it by going off of the formatting from my first book because I also paid someone to format that. And again, I was pretty happy with the formatting of the first book overall. So basically, I just kind of copy and pasted everything and thought I'd be good. And it was a nightmare. It was, there were literally days where I spent 8 hours formatting one chapter. And I would come home and I would just be exhausted from looking at a stupid computer screen for hours and hours and hours. And I felt like I was getting nowhere. And I would talk to Greg and, you know, I'd try to explain to him what I'm trying to do. And he basically would tell me that I needed to have somebody do it. So when somebody tells me that, then it became a personal challenge. Like, oh, hell no, I'm not paying anybody anything to do this. I will do it myself come hell or high water. So I purchased a program. I did not like it. And it's a very well-respected formatting program in the book world. A lot of people use it. I'd say probably 50 to 60% of people use this formatting program. I did not like it at all. So, and it was a couple $100 total. And I wound up getting my money back. I messaged the guy and it was under a month after I bought it, so I could still get my money back. And he refunded me. I just said, listen, man, I said, this isn't working. I said, I don't like the way it looks. I literally would get going on it. I'd get 4 chapters in, something would mess up. I'd have to start all over. It was the most frustrating thing. So then I started looking at Microsoft Word because you can format through Word. It's difficult, but you can. I guess I felt like since I know Word so well and I've been using it all my life, why not go that route, even though it's supposedly the most difficult? And the worst part is formatting photos. That is the worst part of it, is trying to do all the photos. And I remember Greg told me, he goes, the less photos you use, the easier it's going to be. So again, that was like a challenge to me.
Really?
Oh, hell no, I'm gonna use all the photos I want, and I'm gonna make this work. And I did. It just took forever. So once I got the formatting kind of laid out like I wanted it, I did 2 more edits. And with the last edit, I actually read it out loud to myself. And I was told to try that. I've never been one to read things out loud to myself as a writer. It's not something that I like doing. I know people who do, and that's totally fine. But I tried it this time, and it helped a lot because I would be reading parts of the book and I'd be like, oh, this doesn't sound quite right, you know, and I'd highlight it and I'd go back afterward and I'd fix it. So 4 different edit sessions, multiple formatting sessions. You know, like I said, I know I spent more time doing all that than actually writing the damn book. And there were times I'm like, I could just leave it like this. No one will notice. But I valued all 11 stories so much that I would have felt like I was cheating those individuals if I did not have the book exactly how I wanted it. So it was a struggle. You know, I was my harshest critic. I was, and I always will be. I think if you're good at anything, you're your harshest critic in whatever you're good at. Whether that be playing the piano, shooting baskets, throwing the football, bowling, whatever. You are your harshest critic, and that's the way it should be. All the great athletes are. There's no one harder on them than themselves. And that's the way I am with writing. No one's harder on me than myself, and a lot of times it's unneeded, but that's just how I am. It's almost like a perfection thing. And I'm not saying the book's perfect. I found a couple little things here and there that I still missed. They don't bother me, and I guess it's because maybe since I did it all myself, I'm like, I can live with that. What I couldn't really live with is parts of the first book that I didn't catch that the editor and the formatting person should have caught. Those really, to this day, that bothers me. And is
that more so because it is something that they did or didn't do as opposed to you yourself? Is that the main thing?
Partly, and I blame myself because I should have been more diligent about going back and being very thorough. I'm normally a very thorough person when it comes to that type of stuff, but I wasn't in that aspect because I trusted them. I thought, I'm paying this guy decent money to be an editor. He's got all these recommendations, all these reviews from people. He told me he was a big wrestling guy. Well, there's a name in the first book that's misspelled. That's a pro wrestler that I caught that he didn't, and I didn't catch it till the book was out. So just, little things like that if I would have been doing it myself, I probably would have caught them. So I think I was more harder on myself about it than them because, I blame myself. I should have handled it myself, but being a first-time writer, I thought, I better get someone to edit it for me. Yeah, I better get somebody to format it because I was scared to death of formatting back then. I had no idea. I don't think I would have been able to do it. It literally took me watching a bunch of YouTube videos, talking to other authors to give me the confidence that I could do it. So, I think with the first book, though, like I said, it's great content. And I've gotten so many positive comments from people about it that they enjoy it. And that's great. I'm very proud of that aspect. It's just, as a writer, I look at some things differently than, a normal reader would. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just how I'm wired.
Do you think of yourself when it comes to writing and photography specifically as a perfectionist?
Photography, no. I consider myself a hobbyist when it comes to photography. I know so many photographers that are way better than I am and have way more money invested into their equipment than I do. Not to say I have cheap equipment. My equipment costs me quite a bit, but I don't shoot on a mirrorless camera yet. I still like the DSLRs. I did upgrade lenses, so I have some nice lenses now, but I look at the world of photography and I see the expense that it takes to be a really, really good and well-respected photographer. Obviously the talent is one. You got to have that eye for photography, which I feel like when it comes to sports, I do. I shoot a lot of concerts and things like that as well. That's more of a hobby. When it comes to sports, I would put a lot of my sports photography up against most people's. Especially in football, I feel like when it comes to football, I have a better eye than most people for great action shots, but I don't consider myself a great photographer. I'm adequate. My photography is acceptable. But by no means do I think I'll ever win awards for it. It's just something that I enjoy doing as a hobby. Now, writing, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll put my writing up against anybody's. And I'm not trying to be arrogant about it. That's just the way I feel. I've been doing it since I was, I've been getting paid to write since I was 18, 19 years old. So over 20 years, 24 years now. And I've covered pretty much every event that you can think of other than like a Super Bowl or World Series. I've covered professional, and I've covered murder trials and presidential visits and even city council meetings, which are boring as hell. But I've been
good
around long enough.
Lord.
I've had the experience of doing a little bit of everything, which I think makes you a better writer overall. So yeah, I think, and especially when it comes to sports, and I know some great sports writers that are local that I used to look up to as a young writer. I can remember going to cover high school football games as a college kid, and I'd be sitting next to a guy like Norm Sanders, who used to write for the Belleville News Democrat. And I respected the hell out of him. I still do. I think he was a great writer. He retired and he's off doing other things now, but he has a great sense of what makes great sports writing. And I always looked up to Norm as a young writer. And there's several other ones. There's some guys from the Post-Dispatch. Nate Lash was one that I used to look up to a lot as a great writer. He's now with CBC. He's their media guy. And there's some other ones who are no longer in the area. I guess they've moved on. But I try to put my stuff up with theirs. I can remember looking at high school football articles from a Friday night game, and if Norm was at my game, I would look at his the next morning to see how it compared to mine. And I would do that a lot because I would look to see, okay, did we use the same type of quotes? Did we position things differently? Did we interview different people maybe? Did we include more stats or less stats? So just different things like that. And it was always a way of me challenging myself, and not that I ever wanted to try to make myself appear better than them. It's just, I always looked up to them. They were the standard in my eyes, and like, as far as photography goes, for sports photography, Paul Balargian, who shoots for Review STL at times, he's been shooting for the Post and places like that I can remember as a kid, he was shooting games that I was in. So I look at his sports photography as there's not many better out there than Paul. And, so I always tell a lot of my young photographers, if you want to shoot sports, talk to Paul, because he knows what he's doing. He's got 30 years, 40 years in. He's the real deal. So, but I think it's important to, carry yourself in high regard when it comes to those things, because I've been around guys who were very not confident in themselves when they got around other writers. And I've been there in the press conferences where
I have too.
You're afraid to raise your hand and ask a question. It's just a fear you get over. It comes with experience. And, now that I've been around forever, I'll be at press conferences, especially, when it comes to like MMA or wrestling. You get a lot of these so-called journalists who they don't know what the hell they're doing. I'm not saying all of them, because, I got a buddy who's out in Vegas named Adrian Martinez. He does great work. I mean, I put him up with, Ariel Helwani as one of the top fight game journalists out there. He's that good. And I follow him all the time now. So guys like that, I try to make relationships with, to not just become their friend, but to continue to push myself to be the best I can be, I think that's important because, yeah, I've been around for, I started when I was 18 or 19. I'm 43 now, so 25 years.
25 years. Yeah. Wow.
I still try to
Not too
push myself.
shabby.
Yeah, I still try to make myself better with everything I do, and it's funny
But you
because
have to.
you if you're not trying to grow yourself, you're not going to be successful. And that's with anything.
No.
That's anything in
You
life.
know, it's funny because my friend, one of my best friends, his name's Andrew. He's also a published writer. He wrote a poetry book, and
Mhm.
he is. I always jokingly say how he's probably one of the cockiest people I know because he's always, very high on himself and everything.
Right.
But when you interpret the way when you look at it and how he is, he does it because he says to himself, you have to have that mindset, or you, like you said, or you're not going to be successful. Like
Right.
if you are going up against, somebody, say you're wrestling somebody and they're, twice as big, twice as strong, you got to still tell yourself that you can beat them, because if you're already going into the mindset that you're not, you're definitely not going to,
Right.
And the same thing can translate to the world of journalism.
Yes.
Even if we don't have per se the pedigree of some of the other greats in our area, yeah, I am awesome for a guy like me who I can be very talkative, very social, but I feel in certain settings I can be antisocial, especially ones where, you're at a conference or a meeting and you're afraid to raise your hand or ask questions
Hmm.
because you don't want to make yourself, you don't want to seem like you're making a fool out of yourself, you
Right.
know but then you realize you're not going to get any experience or get any better just sitting there, and you're not going to get recognized by anybody if you're just sitting there.
Right.
Like,
That's exactly it.
and life is too short and life is too fast. Life goes by too fast for kind of sit around and wait for something to happen. We got to
Right.
go out and make it happen. And you've been making it happen for 25 years, and counting. And it seems like there's no slowing down with you when it comes to just doing what you love.
Hmm. Yeah, you're totally right. It's That's just how I was built. I believe in working hard to achieve the goals that I set for myself. And I'll be honest, I don't know what lies ahead for me, in the journalism world. It's the game is rapidly changing, and not for the better, I'll say. The days of guys like Bernie Miklasz and things like that, and even though Bernie's still around, again, that's a guy that I looked up to and tried to emulate myself after. Uh, but nowadays, like I tell a lot of these young kids, you can't just be a good writer and be successful. You can't just be somebody who has a flamboyant personality and isn't scared to talk and be successful. You got to have the total package. And it's tough because the one thing that I was always leery of was getting on camera and having to see myself on camera. And I think with losing the weight now, I'm a lot more comfortable with that. But I can remember in college that, the first day of our television class, Riley Maynard, who was the professor, and he just passed away last year, he asked me, he goes, well, what's your dream? I go, to be on ESPN. And he goes, you better kiss that dream goodbye. And he was dead serious. He goes, and he looked at like 20 of us in that class. He goes, out of these 20, he goes, 2 of you might get a job in the journalism business. The rest of you will be flipping burgers or bagging groceries. And he wasn't lying, because I look back at a
Wow.
lot of those people that I had relationships with in college, that I was friends with, that I came up with. There are maybe 1 or 2 that still is semi involved in the news business. It's far and few between now. And so I'm kind of like a dinosaur now. That's the way I kind of look at myself. And I'm very picky about what I do now. Where before, up till about 3 or 4 years ago, any opportunity that crossed my path, I would do. And that's just because I felt like, if I'm not taking that opportunity, somebody else will. Now that I've gotten older, I'm very choosy about what I do. Like, I still love covering Friday Night Football. That's my all-time favorite thing to do, and it pays pretty decent too. So I enjoy going out there on a Friday night and making some money and hanging out with the coaches. And, I know the game of football very well, so I can break things down and tell a great story. The best compliment I ever got as a sports writer was, I used to get told this a lot, that people would read my game stories Saturday morning and they would feel like they were at the game watching it. And that's how I knew that I was doing a good job, because when somebody tells you that, I think that's a great compliment. But yeah, I'm very choosy about what I do now. And venturing into the book stuff was a new challenge for me. So now that I got my second one done, I'll probably write a third one. I don't know what it'll be about. I don't think it'll be pro wrestling, but I know there's a lot of people out there that are, oh, you need to do a third one. There's a lot more. And I've had people.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there ever going to be a For the Love of the Show 3? That is what I'm wondering.
Well, the old saying in wrestling, never say never.
Never say, yeah, just ask Ric Flair.
But I really, I really feel like I need to move on to something else.
Okay.
I feel like there's, and no disrespect to wrestling fans, I love them. I am one. I feel like there's something bigger out there for me. More of something with a bigger purpose, if you want to call it that. And this book kind of, if you read the book, you'll see that there's much more to this book than just being a wrestling fan. And so I think this kind of laid the foundation for me to continue to progress into, a topic that is a little more uncomfortable, is more challenging, is going to, I think, be something that even more people can identify with, because, that's the issue I'm having with the books is pro wrestling fans. They're a specific crowd, and when other people who aren't wrestling fans see a book about pro wrestling, they shy away from it. It's like, oh, that's fake. I don't want to read about that.
Oh, not the F word. Oh,
yeah.
That's a deadly look. Look, man, that F word is a deadly word. As well as I do.
Yes. So, I've really that's one reason I really went with the second book the way I did, is because I wanted other people to read it. I made it a challenge myself to make it appealing to people who aren't wrestling fans. And I think I've done that. I feel like there's a lot of people out there that still need to give it a chance yet, and I hope they do, because I think they'll be pleasantly surprised and they'll enjoy it.
You say you want to kind of go out into something else, whether it, be more, you say there's more for you out there, or something bigger, that's meant to be. Do you think it could also lead possibly to writing about something outside of sports? Or do you feel that, okay, well, good.
So, and I say that because right before I started this book, right before, I was proposed with an idea. And I can talk about it a little bit, because I still may do it. So one of my best friends is really heavily involved with, well, he was my 8th grade history teacher, and he's he was the best man at my wedding, so we're very close. And he proposed an idea to me that he was involved with. Essentially, and I know I'm going to get some of the facts wrong, there was a lady who lost her husband and son, who both drowned. And she was an artist, so she created this painting. And the painting is probably about 11 by 14, so it's a decent size. And it's religious based. It's got crosses on it and things like that. And she started passing this painting around to people who were dealing with tragedies. And it turned into, it was being passed around to people battling cancer. So one of the ladies that I spoke with, and I was actually already starting interviews for this book when the second one came about. I had actually interviewed a lady who had been given the painting, and she had been given it, I believe, from a police officer's family. The police officer developed cancer and actually passed away. And he had a wife and very young daughter. What's special about this painting is each cancer victim or survivor signs the back of it with a message. And then they pass it on to the next person who is battling cancer. And then they sign the back of it. And so actually this day, I rode along with this lady and my buddy because they were giving the painting off to a 7-year-old girl who was battling cancer. So we actually went over to her house, and I met her parents and her brother and her, and they gave her the painting. And you talk about an emotional roller coaster. I've never experienced anything like that. I mean, my dad passed away from cancer, but I've never seen a little kid, 7 years old, having to battle something like that. And this little girl was, I mean, she looked like a Barbie doll. And to think that she was having to go through what she was having to go through, and you know, she loved the Cardinals, so they gave her some Yachty Molina stuff and all, you know, stuff like that. And she, you know, last I heard, she had went into remission and she had beaten it. So
wonderful.
She signed a message and passed it on to the next person. So the gist of this book was going to be basically the surviving people. I was going to talk to each one of them and tell their stories and talk about how the painting has, you know, become like this symbol of survival. And so yeah, that was kind of what I was going for with it. Like I said, it still could happen. It's, you know, that's a topic you really got to be in the right mind frame for too, because you're obviously going to be talking about death and tragedy, and you're going to have to see people who aren't in their best condition. And that day I saw that girl, man, that stuck with me for a long, long time. And, you know, I don't have kids. I'm not a big fan of little kids at all. But God damn, I would never wish anything like that upon a little kid. I mean, I went home that day, and I remember driving home from Belleville. I was in tears after seeing that. So it was a tough thing to deal with, but I think the overall message with that painting is something that I think people would really, really enjoy. And, you know, if anything, it may become like a magazine article I do one day, something a little shorter, but it may develop into a book yet. Who knows? You know, and then there's talk of me doing a very well-known person's biography here in St. Louis. So I can't say the name, but it's a possibility, and I may know this coming weekend for sure if it's going to happen. So I'm open to it. I just got to see if they're open to it, and if they want to invest the time that it's going to take to do it, because they've lived a pretty adventurous life, 70-something years now. So it'd be a lot of hours of them sitting down and telling their life story. So if they're down for it, I'm down for it, because I would love to write somebody's biography, especially this individual.
That would be a big honor. I can tell you, and you are the type of guy where I know, I've known you a long time, known so much of your work that it would be executed very well. Mm-hmm. And I think it goes without saying, a thing or two about telling people stories and putting them together very nicely. So I really do hope that you get that opportunity and everything will work out in that regard. I know there's a lot that goes into an autobiography publication. But those are some of the thing of it is I always enjoy nonfiction.
Me too.
So that's I think another reason on top of why I love, For the Love of the Show, both 1 and 2, mm-hmm. because, they're nonfiction, they're true stories. I love reading autobiographies, things of that nature that you can just connect to.
Right.
And granted, hell, I was the kid that would read like old NFL encyclopedias growing up and like reading about Hall of Fame players and everything. So my sports nerdom went literally was from the beginning. But I love it. Before I let you go, first off, I want to say how much of an honor it was to have you on today, Jeremy.
I appreciate
it means a lot to me.
Anytime.
So want you to get to do your shameless plug and tell everybody where they can purchase your newest book, For the Love of the Show 2, More Stories from Pro Wrestling Fans.
So they can go to Amazon and get it in paperback, ebook, or a brand new hardback that I think it comes out tomorrow. And then you can go to Barnes & Noble, get it in paperback or hardback. You can get it at Ingram Spark, which is a book producer. I've actually been running a special with their QR code for a discount. And then you can also get it through like Google Play. I just got to put on there today as an ebook, both of them, 1 and 2. So you can go there and get it. And I'm running a special now through the end of the month on Amazon. The ebook of the first book is just 99 cents. And I think the second book is the second book is maybe $5.99. So that's still a great price for an ebook. And
on Kindle it says $5.99.
$5.99.
And it's now it's also, if you have Kindle for free, or I should say Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. But otherwise, if you just want to buy it on a one-time thing, it's $5 or $5.99 for the ebook version. I was wondering what it was doing on Google Play, and then you brought up. I'm like, oh, ebook. Yeah, that would work. That would explain it.
That's one thing that I'm still getting used to, is the whole ebook thing. I didn't realize how popular ebooks are with people.
They're on the rise. A lot of people so I work in a nursing home, and there's residents that live there that use Kindles, or will use their smartphone and either do ebooks or audiobooks. It's definitely something that's just more convenient for them, especially.
Yeah, and audiobook is something that I've toyed with. It's pricey though. I wouldn't think that getting an audiobook made would be as costly as it is, especially now. I mean, literally, you could sit at your phone and record yourself reading it, really, if you wanted to, and edit it yourself for practically nothing. But from what I understand, it's, a basic audiobook will cost you probably $1,000 or more. to have made. So
what?
Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, what? But yeah, that's what I've been reading. If you're going to have it, so I mean, if I knew anyone who is heavily into the recording industry and would work me a deal, I would love to do an audio version of it. I think that would be really cool. There's a lot of things I still want to do with the second book. It's only been out a month, and I'm hoping to get to some other cities and promote it. I've talked to a couple of the people in the book about going to their cities and doing some signings. They have some wrestling stores where they live, so I'm thinking about trying to do that, go there and have them with me so they can sign it as well. I'm friends with I think chapter 4, Marcus. I think Marcus is 4 maybe. He's a guy who's in Trailblazer Wrestling. He is.
Oh yeah. Yep, blazing his own trail. Yep.
Yeah,
that's chapter 4 for you.
Marcus is a news anchor in Kansas City for Fox
Marcus
Sports.
Officer.
And we just talked the other night. I'm hoping to get up there and do some things with Trailblazer as well, and do some things with him and catch a couple Royals games while I'm up there. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. I got a lot of other things going on right now that are getting ready to change. I'm leaving the education business very, very soon and taking a new job. So I got to make sure I'm good with that first, and that's all squared away. And then hopefully I'll be able to finally do a little traveling to help promote the book.
Okay, well, I look forward to it. I look forward to talking to you again real soon. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, Jeremy. It means the absolute world to me.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Jeremy Housewright, ladies and gentlemen, author of For the Love of the Show 2. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go get it on Ingram Spark and Google Play. And also be sure to check out his precursor book, Just For the Love of the Show, on sale everywhere. So I'll talk to you later, my friend. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. You too. Thank you. And folks, we're going to wrap it up here on the season 5 finale of Roundabout Sports. I want to sincerely thank everybody. It has been a very, emotional past month. Lots going on in my personal life. Lost my grandpa. But I'm extremely grateful for everybody who has tuned in, for these past 30 plus episodes of this season. It was a long season. To be able to do this with all the amazing guests I've had, whether it's JB Forbes, Dr. Jeremy Housewright, Michael Langston, having Joe Pott on, Ken Sterling, just so many great folks, Michael P. Arthur, and the amazing team at I-70. I want to give a shout out to the amazing team at Interstate 70 Sports Media for a second. And I want to start with Scott Plaza. Scott Plaza is our newest writer who has made an immediate impact on us and on himself. He's a fantastic writer. He's a former professional ball player and teaches high school business in Chicago. And if you check him out every day on Interstate 70 Sports Media, his recaps, his editorials are amazing. But to Andy Cockrell, to Harry Loomis, John Poe, Christopher Miles, Jared Shannon, Babs, Ryan K. Bowman, to everybody, to Nick Rourke, and to Jacob and Dakota from the Blues Fan Forum podcast, the official blues podcast of Interstate 70 Sports Media. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I also want to make sure all you know that, as always, we put up the NAMI helpline at the end of our shows. That is 1-800-950-NAMI. That is 1-800-950-NAMI. The National Alliance on Mental Illness is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for those who struggle with mental health issues. And as always, we put up the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at the end of every show. For that, you dial 988. The line is open 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. Understand you're never alone in this world. There is always somebody out there who loves you, who cares about you, who wants nothing but the best for you. We all go through struggles on a daily basis, and your feelings and what you go through is always valid. And never feel that you're alone. You're just a phone call, a text message, an appointment, an email away from what could be that life-saving moment for you. And be sure to be the listening ears and watchful eyes out for somebody else, because you could be that lifesaver for them. Once again, I want to thank everybody who's tuned in, all the amazing guests and friends that have been on all these 131 episodes. And until next time, for the seasons, when we do the season 6 premiere of Roundabout Sports, I'm the Maestro Jeremy Carpin. Remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. Good night, everybody.